Hello and welcome everyone to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. It is January 9th and we're here with part of the crew. I think that it's just me and Jeff here tonight. Miss Lauren is busy at the moment. She'll be with us before too long. So, Jeff, how are you doing tonight? You're on mute, Jeff.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know how I am. I'll reserve that for later. No, I'm fine. My voice may sound a little scratchy or whatever, but I'm all right. I'll live. I may have to keep muting myself so I can cough and hack, but
that was me last week. You know, there is a terrible virus going around the country, and it's not the flu. It is a virus that is hanging on for like 2 weeks. It's taken people to get over it. I thought it was just me. Talked to other people that are, and as you can see, I'm just now getting my voice back. So, but I'm on my way to being better, thank God, because today was the first day. I actually felt good. So I know what you're going through, Jeff. Hang in there. Saying I'm not connected. Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weird things pop up and
Yeah, this virus thing, whatever it is that's going around, is like awful. Because my wife, she just now tonight, after we ate dinner, she was sitting there and she said, "Can I have the thermometer? I don't feel well." And I handed her the thermometer and she stuck it in her mouth. She's got running a low grade, 100.1, but that's the way it begins. And
yes.
so now she's
and
probably
you'll run a
coming
fever a whole week
and,
too. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I had the West Nile, of course, the fever was just ungodly high. But then I got this, and that fever, it never got real high. It was always low-grade fever, but it's like it never went away for several days. It just hung with you, and you just felt really, really bad. I don't know. It's one of those sicknesses that it doesn't make you feel so bad you can't function, but it makes you feel to where you're just miserable every minute of every day.
Amen. Exactly. But there is an end. I was beginning to think there wasn't. I was thinking, good Lord, you know, it started out one thing and then it another thing and then another thing, and I'm thinking, my goodness, what's next? And but finally,
Exactly.
You know, it was like I started out with earache and throat, and then that went away, and then I had this cough, and that really never went away, and then I got the runny nose part. It was so weird. And so, anyway, thank goodness it's on its way out. We got any Bigfoot news? You know, there's an interesting video going around, Jeff, and I know you shared it with me. And Jeff and I both kind of had the same idea about this video. In the video, the subject is a supposed Sasquatch, and it's in a wooded, swampy area, and it's got its back to the cameraman, and it's tearing bark off this tree. You know, it's perfectly
and it's very, very
good.
Close to the cameraman.
Very, very close. What would you say, 10 feet? Maybe?
Whenever the video first starts out, I would say the guy's probably maybe 20 yards away from this thing when it first starts out.
So he zooms in then.
Maybe that. He's kind of zoomed in, but he's not that far, maybe 20 yards or so. And then he's walking through the water, or the mush, and stepping on sticks, and sticks are cracking, and things are making noise. And this Bigfoot the whole time has its back to this guy and tearing bark off this cypress tree, I guess looking for insects or whatever critters might be living in under that dead bark and what have you. And it's like you're going, okay, is this a deaf Bigfoot? I mean, is this
even exactly a bear? What I was thinking.
Whatever it might have been. Is this thing deaf? I mean, I've hunted a lot of animals in my lifetime. I've snuck up on a lot of animals. And I'm going to tell you what, the slightest crack of a branch, the slightest noise that is out of place, and they turn around and look you eye to eye, and then they're gone. Or,
right.
You know, they decide what they're fixing to do. But this guy's making quite a bit of racket, and he's even talking to the camera, like whispering, "Oh my gosh, it's Sasquatch," or whatever.
Oh,
and this
flag number 2.
Steadily doing it. And yeah. And then he gets within, like you said, feet, you know, maybe 20, 30 feet of this, and we're fixing to get that money shot. You know, you're there, and this creature stands up. And right as it stands up, the camera goes down toward the ground, out toward Aunt Sook's house, and everywhere else, up to the sky. The camera goes everywhere but on the creature, and the video ends. And I'm like going, hoax. Why would you quit filming? It's like I say with all of these kind of hoaxy videos, you are about to become a millionaire. You are about to get footage that no other human being has ever gotten. You are about to get footage of a real Bigfoot creature in the wild, up close, personal, mere feet away. And right when you're fixing to get that money shot of the face of the creature doing its thing, bam, it's gone. It gets turned off. Battery goes dead. Camera goes blurry. Whatever happens always happens. And as a researcher myself, when I had my face-to-face when I was, you know, a couple of years ago while I was an adult and had my good faculties about myself, and the creature ran from me, I pursued it. I went after it.
Right.
And it got away from me because it was wrong. But I went after it. I didn't just stand there and everything. I was going after it. And if I ever get the chance, and there's one in front of me again, it's going to have to kill me. Because I'm going to try to get my hands on it, or interact with it in some way. I'm going to talk to it, or, you know, something. I'm going to do my best to get that evidence that we all want or need. And this guy is right there, and he's got the opportunity to get it. And when the money shot comes about, he drops the camera. So I say hoax.
Huh. Well, I didn't buy it either. And but I was waiting to see what Jeff said, because I always just jump out there and throw my opinion all out there. And so this time I said I'm going to let him give me his opinion, because Jeff and I know each other, but we've never researched together. We really don't know what each other will believe, you know, and I was just hoping that you would say, well, I think it's the real deal. And then I was going to have to say, oh, no. So that made my day to hear you say that you didn't think it was real. It really did. So,
yeah, and I wanted so badly to say it was, you know, because when the first 20 or 30 seconds of this deal, I'm going, this guy has found a wild gorilla, or a gorilla that has escaped or something, living in the woods, you know, because it was sitting just like you see a silverback or a mountain gorilla sitting there. It was tearing this bark off, and you could see that it was using hands to do this. It wasn't using paws to do it because it takes it and holds this bark out to the side where, excuse me, a bear would not have dexterity of its fingers and hands to do. And, you know, you're going, this has got to be real. Oh, wow, look what I've stumbled upon. And then you go, oh, man. They should have just edited it. If they decided to edit it, they should have edited it 30 seconds ago, you know, and we would have all been going, oh, my God, this is amazing. Had they had the wherewithal to just crop it 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds sooner,
well,
we would all
the
be
number
going,
one
oh, my
thing
God.
is, if you're going to hoax a film, let me give you a little advice. You better know about Sasquatch. Because looking at this film, you immediately know that is not what a Sasquatch would do. A Sasquatch would not continue to pull bark off a tree with someone in close proximity. It would be doing the 100 mile an hour exit, you know. And you just got to know and understand Sasquatch. If you plan on hoaxing, which I hope nobody does out there, but if you do at least know something about Sasquatch, have some, you know what the deal is you get people out there hoaxing that they don't really know anything about Sasquatch. They've watched other videos and that's where they get their info. But then you get the people that know about Sasquatch. Well, they're not going to hoax. There's no need to. So, I guess it's a catch-22. But anyway,
all of us that are trying to be credible and trying to be honest and everything, we all know. If you ever get caught hoaxing, you're done. You're done.
You're done.
You're going to be relegated to the realm of Rick Dyer and
I don't know. Rick Dyer did it twice.
Like
he did it twice. He fooled people twice. How does that happen?
And you know, after he did it the first time, he told people, he said, I will hoax again. I know Rick. I've talked to Rick. I even talked to Rick about this. Rick said, I will hoax again, and you will fall for it. Rick was on his Facebook page telling people, I'm going to hoax you again, and you will fall for it. His exact words.
Some will fall for it, not everybody.
And they did.
Because like you say,
they did.
Like you say, once you get that reputation, you're ruined. You're ruined. You'll carry that like
But then you turn right around, though, and you got people like Rick who he's ruined, but I think he's made about 2 or 3 movies now. Just got through filming some kind of big movie with him and Les Stroud and Stacey Brown and just about everybody you can imagine in the Bigfoot world, good or bad reputations. And they just filmed this big, huge movie a few months ago about Bigfoot. And Les Stroud is like the star. Les associated himself. That's why I have such a I'm having such a problem with him at the moment after thinking so highly of him and actually working with him and everything. Now he's went out into La La Land and, you know, doing stuff with people that are known hoaxers and doing the sensationalism stuff and the portals and all of this kind of stuff when he sat right there in my camp and told me he thought every bit of that was a bunch of bumpkins.
Well, there you go.
And
I know of an individual about 12 years ago that got caught hoaxing, and he just kind of fell off the map for about 10 years, and then he came back, and now we got a whole bunch of new people out there that don't know about his previous history, and he said he's just like, he's a big name, and it's like people don't know about that.
Yep.
And so You know, that's the way it is. You know what? It is time to bring our guest on. Everyone we have, yeah, it is. He's been patiently waiting in the wings, and Miss Lauren, are you back?
I'm here.
Hey, could you just
hear me?
read that? Yes, I can.
Okay.
Can you read the intro, please?
Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio presents Mark Mills Part 2. On Monday, December 5th, 2016, we visited with Ohio Bigfoot researcher Mark Mills. Mark has had some amazing experiences, and we only scratched the surface of what this researcher knows. To hear this episode, you can catch it on our YouTube channel or on our archives in blogtalkradio.com. Tonight, Nite Callers brings back Ohio researcher Mark Mills for Part 2. Here's a little about our guest. Mark Mills has been researching Bigfoot since 1998. When he was a child, his dad took him to see the legend of Boggy Creek. Mark moved to Ohio in 1993 from Florida. In March of 93, a friend of his gave him a clipping from the Columbus Dispatch newspaper, and it was an article talking about Bigfoot sightings in Ohio in the previous year of 1997. Mark was fired up to go out and look there for himself. He first attended a Bigfoot conference in Coshocton, Ohio, to get some info on the subject. Then he went and got a topo map of the area of Coshocton and started to do some research there. The very first day, he found a three-toed print. Mark Mills' first encounter took place in May of 1998 in Wayne National Forest, and he has had multiple experiences. His reports can be read on the BFRO website, report number 3589, report number 3686, and report number 3767. Mark Mills can be located on his personal Facebook page.
Thank you so much for that, Lauren. I appreciate it. Mark, welcome back to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Well, hello, everybody, and Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year and welcome back.
We're so happy to. We really are happy to have you back because the last time you were on the show, we really feel like that we didn't even begin to cover any of the all of the experiences that you've had, and we didn't even get into how you research and what things you consider sign and such like that. So let's start out with some more experiences, if you don't mind, continuing your story.
Sure. Well, as the intro went, talked a little bit about stuff. So what I did was, after going to my first Bigfoot convention, a couple guys told me that there's been this sighting of reports over in Coshocton and Woodbury Game Preserve. And I was like, really? So I went and got a topographical map of the area. And what I did was start hiking little areas at a time so I wouldn't get lost. So I'd go into one little area for a weekend, then I'd go to another area, and just really start observing the area and the wildlife and taking in all the sights. And being new at it, I just had no clue what I was doing, because I was like coming into the beginning where it was still taboo to talk about Bigfoot, because people would say, oh, you're crazy, there ain't no such thing as Bigfoot. Well, I read in the Dispatch that they had these sightings in 97, like 12 of them in Ohio, and I'm like, well, there's got to be something to this, so I'm going to go out and do my part. So I'd go out, and the first time I ever went out, I found a three-toed footprint, and I was like, that's pretty neat. And since then, I've found out that depending on the terrain or maybe the species or whatever, that there could be a 3, 4, or a 5-foot, 5-toed Bigfoot out there. So I thought that was fascinating. So I went up on this hill on another area on my map, and I found these pine trees up on this hill. And there's an old graveyard abandoned from the 1800s. And I saw this indentation in the ground under the pine needle, so I started clearing it out. And lo and behold, I found the same three-toed footprint that I found like a month earlier. So at that point, I figured out, that's when I started figuring out they use ridges. They like high points to move when they can. They'll take a high point so they can see what's around here, pay attention to their surroundings. So at that point, I was like, wow, they use ridges to move around instead of just going straight through valleys and out in the open. Because in that part of Ohio, they used to have where they would dredge for coal, and they'd leave what they call strip mine after it's been mined of the coal. They strip the land. So some of these spots are still badly marred from the coal days, and some of it's been reclaimed. Well, these areas nobody goes to because they're kind of where you wouldn't go to because it's just nothing pretty there, like, say, you would go to a state park or a national park. And in Ohio, most people live in major cities, and we have lots of area out there that's still wooded or forested, hilly, especially eastern Ohio is real hilly because you're starting to talk about the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So I'd go out there, and I'd go every weekend. So I could get out there, and that's what you got to do. You just got to go. You can't sit at home. You can't go on the internet. You got to get your feet out in the woods and do the hard work.
Did you go during the day or at night or both?
Well, when I first started out, I went in the day because that's when I would go. I didn't know that at that time the Bigfoots were more nocturnal. So I would just go to areas, and I'd take my topo map and start marking areas. Well, then I started noticing I found this tree one time. I'd say probably a good 10 feet off the ground, this little branch was twist snapped it around. It wasn't just snapped, it was like a twist snap, like something grabbed it and did a twist snap. And I got a picture of it. Pretty wild. How did the branch that high up get twist snapped? If there was a wind, I could see it getting snapped, but to be twist snapped, you would think it'd have to be a cyclone or a tornado or something because the branch just didn't spin around like this one did. Something had to
high up are we
do
talking?
this. Like I said, it's about 10 foot up.
Okay.
And it wasn't like a human could climb up there and do it, because if you tried to do that, you would break the branch. And so that's what made it odd by finding that branch. So that got me to looking more closely in my surroundings at stuff. I was like, well, that's pretty wild. So as time went on, I started paying more attention to stick structures, anything out of the normal that you would have to start becoming like a detective, basically. You start looking for clues. So as time went on in that area, that's when I moved to Wayne National Forest and had my first sighting. And that was by accident. And that's also when I discovered that weekend that knocking, not necessarily knocking, but somebody chopping with the axe would be an attractant to these things because of that encounter. And not only that, but gunshots, like a lot of shooting, because we were shooting, and that seemed to attract it too in that first encounter. Which you start picking stuff up as you start going through these years and figuring, because a lot of stuff I discovered is by accident. And that's when I started discovering that Bigfoot are like cats. They're curious. So they're real curious, like you may not know they're there, but they're watching you, especially if you're out in the woods and it's quiet, you don't hear nothing, and you just get this sense of heebie-jeebie down your back spine like you're being watched, then you know for sure there's something going on. So you start picking up on little things. Well, then as time went on, I started going to different areas in Ohio. I'm like, well, I studied this area and I really haven't found too much. I'm going to go to a new area. So that they had this area called AEP, which is American Electric Power up here, and they got this called the Recreation Lands. We went camping down there, and this was probably the second year I was into it. And then all of a sudden one night we're sitting out there by the campfire about 2 in the morning. And to give you a picture of this, it's like this long, what it is out there is they had these, when they did the strip mining for coal, they would open up springs and then they would dam it off and they'd make like a pond. So it might be like 2 miles long and maybe a quarter of a mile wide, but it's all spring-fed water. So the water's really clear. And we're sitting there one night, and across the other side was all woods. But the side we were on had little campground areas where you could fish off the bank during the day or in the primitive camping during the night. And it was about 2 in the morning, and on the other side, we heard this. The only way I can describe it would be a horse with feet, and it would go splash, kabloop, like if you ever threw big heavy rock in the water, you hear like this kabloop. But you could tell that it wasn't a horse, and it wasn't a deer or something, because as each foot sound like hitting the water, it'd be this kaplooch, 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 kaplooch. So about the fourth time I heard it, I started reaching for this lantern I had, the handheld flashlight lantern that held like a 6-volt battery at the time, because back in them days we didn't have all the high tech we have now. So I turned it on across the little lake there, and whatever it was, by that time made it back up into the woods, and we're all sitting there going, wow, what was that? Well, about 10 minutes later, this beaver came around to our side, and he whacked his tail. I was like, huh. So this thing must have been chasing this beaver, and the beaver got away from him. He got in the water before whatever was chasing it could get it, so I kind of assumed that was probably a Bigfoot. But we didn't get to see it at that time, because whatever it was already made its way back into the woods, because it heard the commotion we were making on our side. So I was like, well, that might have been a Bigfoot, but really don't know. Well, the next night we was camping there, this was where it got weird, was all these owls started, hoo-hoo. And I mean, I would go for if there was 1 or 2 owls, but there must have been a dozen owls that night, and they were all just hoo-hoo, all around us. And that just seemed odd to me, because I've heard owls out in the woods, and I never heard that many together in one area ever. I'd hear 1 or 2, but it's like 12 or 14 that night.
Goodness.
I was like, that's pretty crazy for being in one little area. But that was about it that ever happened there. I never got to research too much there after that, because I started going to other places throughout Ohio. And as time went on, I was like, well, that's pretty neat. So then I discovered Salt Fork State Park at that time. That became pretty popular way back when time Monster Quest was on TV. Became popular. So when Monster Quest first started, they made a announcement about Salt Fork, which at the time there's a guy named Don Keating that ran the Bigfoot for the state of Ohio. He was like the state of Ohio guy, and he would put on these Bigfoot conferences at Salt Fork every year. Well, as time went on, he got out of it, and the Mark DeWert took over where he left off. But when Monster Quest come out, it was kind of like telling the world about the fishing hole, because before that happened, that place was really active with all kind of stuff, with all kind of Bigfoot stuff. Like, I would go out, me and a couple other friends, we'd always go out, and we started finding where they would take trees and line them up against others, like strip all the branches off and just line them up, like one on one side of a tree, go to the next tree, put another strip tree against it, and then go to the next one. which I think I got one of them on there where my picture is on the Nite Callers website thing there. But anyways, that was wild to find, so I got a picture of that one day, and I'm like, now who would do that in the middle of nowhere? Because we're talking we'd be out hiking and find this stuff in just the middle of nowhere. It's not like a person's going to go out there and be doing this for fun on a weekend or weekday, you know what I'm saying? So then we started finding where something was taking trees and shoving them through other trees long ways, like in the forks of two trees. And then we were finding where they would do that and start making like a lean-to here and there, just wild stuff. We started finding all these weird stick things. And then we started finding trees where they would take sticks and just go around the base of a tree like it was making a bonfire, but there's actually no fires, just sticks piled up around the bottom of the base of a tree in areas. So all this stuff starts meaning something. What they mean, I don't know at this point, but these are just things we found over the years. And then
did you ever find trees bowed over a pathway?
Yes, we found trees, like we would find trees where they would take big, tall trees, not mature trees, but big, tall, skinny trees, maybe 2 or 3 inches round in diameter, but tall, and they would pull them down, and they would take a dead tree and lay on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
What that mean is, I don't know, but we found lots of them. One time we found where 2 trees were bowed together, like across each other, and that was wild. I'm like, huh. Because them trees just didn't get bowed by themselves. Something was pulling them down and placing the dead trees on them because they were dragged to that spot. It wasn't like they fell over, because normally if a tree falls over, and if you look close enough, you can see the bottom stump, tree broke off or something, but these trees weren't like that. You could tell they were drugged and put on top of these other trees to hold them down. And that started becoming pretty wild. At one time, we found this one area, there must have been, I must say, 6 to 8 little teepees, no taller than 8 inches. And what that means, I don't know, but the only thing I could figure is maybe the juveniles were trying to learn to do something, or a play area, because not far from there we found this brush pile where something piled up all these branches, and they were broke off, they weren't cut. And I'm like, that's pretty wild. And so there's an orange loop. You got to go outside the park and come back in on another park. And it's a good 8-mile loop if you do the whole loop. But we'd go on the backside. Like, for instance, one night, me and 3 guys went, it's what it is, it's a horse trail. And we hiked in there a good, I'd say about a mile. And on the way in, this was like the first time we decided to do a night thing out there, because I've never done it. And out there, when it gets dark, it's dark. It's pitch black. There's ain't nothing like just being nowhere in the pitch black. And back in them days, you didn't have LED lights, and all you had was little 2D cell flashlights. So it was kind of spooky walking way back.
No
in
night
there,
vision.
just flashlights. What's that?
No night vision.
No, we didn't have night vision at that time. All you had was little D-cell flashlights and a couple walkie-talkies. That was about it. And some bionic ears. They call these things bionic ears, which you put them on, and they're designed to like to hear TV if you're old and can't hear. But they actually work pretty good out in the field, because you turn them on and you can hear within 100 yards of your area. So it's like kind of like, I don't know what they would call a mic. I don't know if it'd be shotgun mic or boom mic, but anyways, these things would pick up 100-yard area circumference listening to it. So what we did was we all went back there with these chairs. We hiked in there about a mile. One guy would look over one guy's back facing him, and the other guy facing him would look over the other guy's back, and vice versa. There was 4 of us, so we made like a plus symbol on this horse trail. And I'd say 20 yards from us, we did have a lantern that was battery-powered fluorescent back in that day, where you'd have to charge it up. And you had this little fluorescent lantern. And what we did was we took this rope, we threw it over a branch, pulled it up there, and tied it off just so there was a light out there in the middle of nowhere. So we got there just before dark, I'd say probably about 8. And on the way out there, the one guy had this, like, pipe, and he'd blow in it and make, like, this toot, toot, just a weird sound. We just were doing it for giggles. We didn't think nothing about it. And so I guess we sat out there from about midnight. About that time, everybody's tired, nothing going on. We did hear what sounded like footsteps at one time, we thought, in the bionic ear, but we just weren't sure that night, and because it was kind of a little windy. So we all decided to pack up and head out for the night. And I'd say must have been about 30 yards before we got out into this parking lot. All of a sudden we were getting rocked, and I don't mean by one rock. I mean it was like a gauntlet. There must have been 3 or 4 of them standing there. And as we're walking, they start throwing these rocks like to ambush us, and we all started running at that point. And the one guy with us, he was pretty old. He was kind of in the front. So we didn't want to run him over. He's probably in the 60s, but he's trying to run for his life. We're all running for our life, and these rocks about half the size of your fist, they're just flying. Luckily, nobody got hit. So I don't know if they were doing it to scare us off or if there's young ones in the area. I just don't know. But we got out in the parking lot. Come out here, chickens. Come out here. We was trying to egg them to come out of the woods, but they would never come out. And I'd imagine that was Bigfoot because I don't know why anybody'd risk standing on the side of the trail and throwing rocks at people, not knowing if somebody had a gun or something to shoot back at you. But that was the first time I ever got rocked.
Wow.
And that was freaky because going through a gauntlet of rocks, I've never experienced that in my life. So we just kept researching that area, and over the years, we would find footprints. But here's we go talking about green again. We didn't have no plaster Paris because we just didn't think about that stuff. But we got pictures of footprints. We found them from maybe a little bigger than your fist. I mean your hand stretched out to, I don't know. We found some 12, 16, 18 inches long.
Mm-hmm.
So, like one particular weekend, it rained like for 2 days when we went out there, and it must have been a group of them because we found like 3 or 4 different footprints all up and down this 4-mile hike we did. And like I say, you could tell that they were real because they had what they'd call that mid-tarsal break almost to them, but it wasn't soft enough to get a deep footprint, but it was soft enough that they were in the ground a good inch. And we'd get by it and try to step down with our feet, and we couldn't even dent the ground. So that area is pretty active back there at Salt Fork. But the problem was after Monster Quest come out, then you had Finding Bigfoot, and then they go out there and do the same thing and get people out there. So over the years, what happened was the Bigfoot started getting wise. So you'd have to start using new tactics to get them to do anything out there because people's hounded them so much out there, they just kind of stay up on the hill now and pretty much stay away from people because they're like, well, we kind of figured you people out down there, you know what I'm saying? Because they've been hounded so much, you have to find new ways.
Not only that, I think they probably developed new ways to communicate too.
Yeah, they had to find new ways to communicate because on them shows they talk about wood knocks and rock knocks and owls, and they just got to be. We started going out there, they just wouldn't respond to nothing we tried to do because we would try wood knocks on them and screams and whoops, and they just wouldn't respond to nothing. They just was like, well, we figured y'all out. But on one occasion, me and one guy was back there on the trail, and we did the same thing. I looked over his back, and he looked over my back. And then we had two people out in the parking lot with walkie-talkies. And the guy, Mike, a friend of mine, he's like, I hear something moving. I'm like, what? And at that time, we only had one pair of them bionic ears, and I put them on. And something was moving, and it was using the sound of like when cars or motorcycles went by on the road. That's when it would like move. It was like using the cover of sound to move so you wouldn't notice it.
Right.
And I was like, that's pretty sneaky now. That's where I started saying these things ain't dumb, because I'm like, you know, if these were dumb, we'd already have a specimen by now, but these things appear to be highly intelligent. And so anyways, we was back there the one night, me and Mike, and we're sitting back there, and we took a Coleman lantern. At that time, the Coleman lantern was the white gas where you had to pump it up and kept pumping it up when the light would go low. It wasn't like the propane lanterns of today. So we took one of them and set it up the trail from us about, I'd say about 30, 40 yards. And we took some aluminum foil and put on one side where you couldn't see us. But we put it where we could look all out in the woods up that way behind us. And by this time, it's about 11:30, and these other folks called us on the radio and go, y'all having any luck? And we're like, well, we heard some footsteps, but we're not sure. So we said, we're just going to pack it in for tonight and go to another area. Well, when I went to, I folded up my chair and I went to go grab the lantern. And when I turned around and started walking, there was something behind us out there. And when I took a step, it took a step. But this thing was so big that when it took a step, I don't know how to describe it except it had to be King Kong himself, because it must have been an alpha male, because when it put its foot down, it was like, boom. And I was like, what? I took another step, and it took a step. Boom. And by this time, my friend Mike, he's never heard nothing like that, because I've heard it on my first encounter. And he starts panicking. He's like, turn off the light, turn off the light. I'm like, no, man, you won't see the thing. I've already seen one before, but I want you to see it. And he's like, turn off the light. So when I turned off the lantern, this thing started beeline to us going, dum, 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 dum. Well, luckily at that time, I had one of these million candle powered lanterns that you charge up. And I put it over my back. Yeah, spotlight. And I put it over my back. And we started running for our lives, because this thing, like I said, started beelining for us, like, donk, 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 donk.
I don't understand what your friend's reasoning was to turn the light off.
I didn't either. He just panics, like maybe he thought they couldn't see us or something. I'm like, I don't know, but he was panicking. And he's like, just turn it off. And I said, see, you're getting what you wanted. I turned the light off. So we grab our stuff and we start running, and he's panicking on me. And we run, and we're running for our life. But I was like, thankfully I had my lantern, my spotlight, and I must have hit it in the eye, because when I was running, I put it right over my shoulder, just slinging it all around, because I did not want this thing to touch me, whatever it was. And apparently I hit it in the eye good enough and stopped it. And we ended up getting out of the woods, and he's freaking out on me. I was like, calm down, dude, calm down. We got out of there, calm down. And he's about panicked out on me. I was like, wow.
Well, we're going to pick up with another story when we come back. We're going to take a short intermission, and I'll be back in a moment, folks. And welcome back to Nite Callers, Bigfoot Radio. Tonight our guest is Ohio researcher Mark Mills. Mark, are you back with us?
Sure I am.
Okay. Sorry for that interruption. If you'd like to continue, pick it up from here.
All right, so what we discovered is at nighttime the Bigfoots are active, more so than the daytime. So we picked up another body. His name was Mike also, and we took him to another place. It's another park we go to. We go out there at nighttime. The Mike F and there's a Mike M. Well, the Mike M, he is a new guy, and he's never been out. He's always been out daytime Bigfooting, but he never done nighttime research. And as soon as we were getting ready to go in the woods, we heard these two, oh. He's like, oh, we got to go, man. Let's get in the car and go. Let's go. Like, calm down, man. It'll be all right. Calm down. We got bear mace. We got a flashlight. Calm down. We'll be all right. And he's like, oh, no, man. That scared me. Let's go. I said, it'll be all right. So what we did was we went on to this little short horse trail. They went along this ridge for about a mile. You hiked in there about a mile. And at the end there is like a rest place for horses where you can tie your horse off. And they had these benches, and you could sit in there and take a break. Well, instead of going fishing, we decided we were going squatching because a lot of these parks in Ohio, once it's dark, you're not allowed to be in the woods unless you're hunting or you're fishing. Because usually the parks up here close like 9 o'clock. So what we do is act like we're going fishing, and we just ease off into the woods to go do our researching. And so we went down this one trail, and we got to the end, and it was the first cold front coming through from the winter, where the temperature is actually going to drop pretty good from like 60 at night down to 30. And so we get to the end. We hiked in there to the end, and it was a little windy that night because, like I said, the cold front was coming. And we're sitting there, and we do a couple of these wood knocks, and we do a couple of the whoop, whoop, and then we did a couple of howls, oh. And we'd sit there, and all of a sudden we heard this weird cry. I never heard it before, but it almost sounded like a baby out there, just wah, wah. It's just hard to describe. You had to be in there to hear it. And we're like, oh, wow, did you hear that? Y'all hear that? And we're like, yeah. Well, by this time it starts raining a little bit, and we're like, well, I think we're going to leave this area because it's too windy now, and it's getting cold, and it's rainy. We'll just head out. So we're heading back out towards the road, and we get about 5 minutes into the walk, and all of a sudden this stick comes sailing over our heads and lands off to the left of us. And in the front was the Mike M, and I was in the middle, and Mike F was behind me. And the guy that wanted to leave when we first got there, Mike M, he's like, ha, 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 very funny, Mike F, for throwing that stick. And I said, he didn't throw that stick. And he's like, what? Because he thought that the last guy threw it to spook him because of what he heard earlier, but none of us threw the stick. So we're all shocked, like, okay, let's pick up the pace. So we start picking up the pace. And whatever threw the stick decided to run down the ridge and wait on us again because there was only one way in and one way out, and this thing knew it. And it was like another 5 minutes goes by, and this thing's waiting on us. This time it threw a big old rock, and it came sailing over our heads and hit the ground with boom. And by that time, we all started running. I'm like, well, I think we need to outrun it this time because whatever it is not liking us being here. So we took off and got out of there, out of that area. So we decided to go down to the beach area where we heard there's an encounter by a fisherman and his son one night about 4 in the morning. They said they were out there fishing in this little cove. And they said it sounded like a monkey, like monkeys. Woof, 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 woof. Then they said the monkeys changed to these growls. And then next thing they know, these rocks are flying at them. So they decided to pack it out of there and leave. So we're like, well, let's go see if this area is any good, which was probably from where the rock and stick out there on that's probably a mile away, because you had to come out of the woods and go down this road, and then we went to the left side into this cove. So we go down there, and there's this big dead tree on the beach, so we get this ball bat, and we start going, bam, bam, bam. We do 3 knocks, and then we'd listen. Wait about 10, 15 minutes, do it again, bam, bam. Well, about the second bam, this big rock comes sailing from over the other side in this cove and landed right in the water nearest it and almost splashed us. And we're like, what? So we get our little flashlights out and we start looking over that way, and we could never see it, but it was there, which that freaked us out, because that proved that fisherman guy that had the rocks thrown at him 2 years earlier, whatever it was, is still living on the other side there.
Yeah.
So we used to go back to that area a few times and mess with it. And we'd go over there and do some howls and beat on the tree. And at one time it snuck around, either that or it was 2 of them, because one snuck around us and was up the hill from us. And we decided, well, now they're circling us. And one threw a rock from the other side, and then one behind us threw a rock from top into the water. And we was like, well, I think we need to leave this area.
Yeah.
So we ended up leaving that area. Another thing they like is when you take peanut butter. You get peanut butter, like we'll go to an area during the daylight, and we'll take peanut butter, get a jar, and smudge it all around the trees in the area we think's pretty good. And then we'll go back that night, and we'll work that area. Sometimes we get responses, and sometimes we don't. Another thing they like is bacon grease. Like one time we were at Salt Fork, and I had these ears of corn that we had from dinner, and just for giggles, we took it about 2 miles back in the woods, and we carried some bacon grease with us. Poured this bacon grease on top of the corn cobs, so the grease spread out all over it and on the ground. And at one of the corn, they were both missing when we went back the next day, but the one corn cob, you could see where this finger went through the grease and picked up that ear of corn. It wasn't like an animal grabbed it, because there was no tracks around. It was muddy. We put it intentionally in the middle of this mud pile, just so whatever come through would have to leave tracks of some sort, whether it be a raccoon, a deer, anything. But whatever grabbed this stood way out on the edge of the grass where it wouldn't leave a print. But you could see where it looked like a finger went right through the grease to grab that ear of corn, which was pretty wild. So that showed some intelligence there to do that.
Yes, they're very.
And then we found the second ear of corn. We put like 20 feet away, and something ate like half of it and then left the other half and threw it on the ground. But the one where the finger went through the bacon grease, it's definitely, we never found that ear of corn.
Hey, everybody likes bacon.
Oh, yeah, bacon's good. So bacon grease is pretty good. They even say they like hot dogs. Like if you go grill hot dogs, they'll come around because they like the smell of grilling hot dogs. But at Salt Fork State Park, there's this one area called the Handicap Picnic Area. You'll probably hear a lot about people that in the field know about it, but that place is always active with sightings, always. It's like up on this top of this hill on this plateau, and they made it where people in wheelchairs can go there and picnic. And there's always all kind of activity going on in that area. And one night in Easter, me and Mike M., we pretty much had this whole park to ourselves this one week, and I bet there was only 6 families camping in the campground area with us that weekend. So we basically had free reign of the park that weekend. And we went out to the Hoaxing Cave area, they call it, and it's like this overhang way back in this little valley, and it's right up against the lake. And what we'd do is go over there, and I'd take a bat, and I'd beat on this trash can. just bam, bam, bam. And it would echo way back in that valley. And then one night, I think I counted eight of them coming down the hill, because you would hear them stepping on, breaking like logs and branches, because it's a steep hill. And what we'd do is go hide in front of my car. We'd get out in front of it and hide. And we could hear them coming down. Like I said, I think one night I counted like 8 of them coming down the hill. And then we would do the howl. Oh! We'd do like 3 of them loud as we could. And then they would get mad, and they'd start throwing rocks. And these rocks would come in and hit the parking lot, this blacktop, and you'd hear them come through the trees going, bam, and they'd hit the parking lot. Bam! I bet they threw like eight rocks. And then we'd holler like, hey, what y'all doing? And then you could hear them all go back up the mountain. Once they figured out it was humans, they would all go back up the mountain. And I was like, well, that's pretty wild. And I think that's part of the reason why that area got burned out, because of stuff like what we used to do to them. And one night I was talking about, Easter weekend, they actually threw a rock into the lake. It sounded like a bowling ball.
Yeah.
And then after we made them go back up the hill, we decided to go back to the handicapped picnic area. It was about 2:30 in the morning. And so the Mike, he went down the trail about 50 feet, and I went behind the restroom. And he was flashing his flashlight out in the woods, and he goes, oh, what is that? And he saw these red eyes. And then all of a sudden, whatever it was, started beelining towards me. And the only way I can describe it to you, it sounded like Bozo the Clown running. It must have been a juvenile. And his feet, the way he ran, it was like flop, 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 flop. It was actually flopping on the ground. I was like, wow, that sounded like Bozo the Clown running through there. Which I got some of that on my camera, but there's no video, because all you can just hear the flop, 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 flop taking off. So I didn't have a light on it, because lights give you away. So every time we go in the woods, we always go blackout. To me, it's like they can zero in on you if they see a light.
Right.
So we always go out under cover of darkness and get our eyes used to the night vision from the natural light.
I think they can see you in the dark, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they can see in the dark just like it's daylight because of their night vision. I'm sure they got sharp night vision. Because there's one story about this family. They were having a picnic out there, and this Bigfoot bellied up. It snuck up to the table. They had like all this food on this table, and this Bigfoot got on his belly and did a belly crawl up there and reached up and grabbed some food, and then got up and run towards the wood. And people saw it, and they're like, wow, that's crazy.
Imagine.
And then another time there was a football game going on over in Coshocton, and they actually stopped the game because a Bigfoot was walking along a river over there on Tuscarawas River. That's one of the sightings that happened in the area. But what I learned is these things are highly intelligent, and they're nocturnal. They got good eyesight. They got good nose. On one occasion, we heard one of them scream twice. It sounded like a woman being murdered real close to us, and that was freaky. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like a woman being stabbed. Just, ah! We're like, what in the world?
You sure it wasn't a mountain lion?
What was that?
They're known to sound that way. Are you sure it wasn't a mountain lion? They're known to sound that way.
No, this was at a state park pretty close to Cincinnati, but it could have been. I'm not going to say what. And a lot of stuff in the woods you can never really identify unless you see it with your eyes. I mean, there's so many noises. But I think the craziest time was one time I was with a group of people, and we was at that handicapped picnic area, and I whistled, and something in the woods whistled back. It mocked me. And we were like, wow, that's crazy. And then one time, I got this property down in Adams County. I got me like 15 acres on top of this mountain. And when I first got it, I didn't have it timbered. And it was my very first camping trip out there. And it was me and a couple other guys. And it was a misty night. And I never camped there before, so we was in this canopy where we were staying dry, and we started making noises. And out on the ridge, something come running through there. And where I'm talking about, where my property is, once you get off this gravel road, you got to ride 4 miles on top of a mountain ridge, and there ain't nothing back there to get back to my property. And whatever this was come running through the woods. And then it started throwing rocks at us. And we're like, wow, that's crazy. Who would do that? Can't be a person out there. Person want to get shot throwing rocks at you. Well, what was freaky was we were staying in my pop-up camper, and I had a generator going. And probably about 2 in the morning, this thing run out of gas. And we're all like, did you hear that? And I'm like, what? They go, the generator stopped. And I'm like, sure did. I said, I'm not going out there. And so what we thought was maybe this thing picked up the generator and threw it down the mountainside. But it wasn't until the next morning when I noticed that it just run out of gas, so that kind of relieved us. And then another incident happened that same year. I took my wife out there, and we went camping. It was me, her, and she was watching this little girl. And I was just about to fall asleep one night when something right outside the pop-up, it did a whistle like, and she's like, Mark, wake up. I said, what? She goes, something just whistled. Was that you? I'm like, now how am I whistling if I'm trying to go to sleep, lady? Well, something just whistled out. Something just whistled outside the camper. And I said, okay. So my Trailblazer has one of them lights that flash, and the horn goes, honk, honk, honk. So I just hit the panic button and set it off for the night. So whatever is out there would leave for the night. Apparently it worked because it was quiet the rest of the night and the rest of the weekend. Wow. Then on another occasion, when I left and I come back the next week in the camp, something took this tree and bent it over and snapped it, like saying, don't come back here on this trail no more. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And it was a big tree. It's probably about 4 or 5 inches around, and it just snapped it over like, don't come back here no more, blocking the trail. And I'm like, something's telling me something here. And then let's say the next year, same thing on another trail that goes to a different direction. They did the same thing. They broke a tree saying, like, don't come back here. We don't want you back here. It snapped this tree broke about 8 foot high, and it was a maple tree. Snapped it pretty good. And it was fresh breaks. They weren't like from tornadoes because there was no rain them couple weeks. There was no heavy winds. And these are fresh breaks. So whatever did it had to have superhuman strength because trees just don't break for no reason. So I said, well, I'll fix them up.
What is the most terrifying story you've ever heard of about Bigfoot?
The most terrifying story I heard?
Yes.
Well, I've heard one that's really terrifying. Well, there's a couple, but one I can tell you about happened in Mississippi in the 80s. This guy and girl, they went out in the woods to do whatever, and they were never found. They never returned home, so they sent out a search party. They found their car flipped over with the door ripped off, and all they ever found was the guy's shoe. Never found him or her.
Wow.
And that was in the early 80s. And then there's another story. It's more graphic than that. It's pretty graphic, and this happened over the Texas border into Oklahoma, where this couple went out to do the wild thing, and they found him with his neck spun around out in the bushes, and they found her dead on top of the roof of the car.
Was this Brown Springs, Oklahoma?
That might be that story.
Yeah, I've heard that story.
Yeah.
All the times we go out researching and, a lot of these places that we go are great parking spots for couples.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I've been doing this for 17 years, and I have yet to have parkers drive up on us or to find parkers out there. People just don't park in the woods anymore.
Nah.
And I don't know, I guess nowadays girls want a motel room, or I don't know, but it's just, it's like, I remember when I was a teenager, we would go to the woods, and so it just seems strange to me that, have they been frightened out of the woods? Is there a ongoing urban legend among high school kids now? Or what's going on?
That's a good possibility. There's at East Fork State Park, they don't even coon hunt in there no more. Nobody hunts in there no more because one guy had GPS on his dogs, and one dog disappeared, and they found it with the broke neck up in the tree. How's the dog going to get a broke neck and hang up in the tree? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Another story I heard was this guy and the girl, they were parking out in the woods, and the guy drank a beer, and he threw the bottle in the woods. Well, then the beer bottle come back and hit the car. And he's like, well, I'm getting out of here. So he takes off in this Charger. This is a 70s Charger. And all of a sudden, he could see the taillights behind him. There's something big and massive chasing him. And it's taking its hand and whacking the back end of his car and making a fishtail.
Lord.
And it was doing it back and forth on each side. So they said they got up to 60 mile an hour before they could get away from this thing. And police and made a report, and you could see where these scratch marks on both ends of the car back in the rear panels where something was hit. And that was another spooky story. But the spooky thing is to go out at night and to call these things in, because you never know what they're going to do. Never know. You could run into one that's having a bad night, and that could be the end of you. I think these things are just like people. There's some good ones and there's benevolent bad ones, and I don't know. I hear stories where they chase people, they trail people. I think
it depends on the individual. I think.
Yeah, I think if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you might be dinner.
Right. You might. What do you think about this 911 David Pilates? Do you think there's any truth to that stuff, or what do you think?
I don't know. That's some definitely interesting stories that people reported and say. But if you do check into the missing people reports, there's something going on, because every year there's thousands of people go missing in America. It ain't just America, it's worldwide, but I think there's 10,000 a year in America that just vanish without a trace. Where are all the people going to? That's what I don't understand. Where are they going? There's something's going on. There's cases where I hear people go outside and their keys and wallets are there and they never find them again. It's like they just vanished. I don't know what's going on out there, but there's something going on. Like, what I find strange is one time I put up a plot watch camera and a game camera, and they both failed in the same night. I never understood what happened there. It's like they got zapped. And then another time,
kind of like that. It's kind of like the Appalachian Trail. On the through hikers, there's like 35 people a year that come up missing.
Yeah.
Like bodies never found, gear. I mean, the people that hike the Appalachian Trail, they've got all the gear that they're going to need to hike it from start to beginning. That could be a 40-pound rucksack.
Yeah.
And all of their gear, their belongings, everything disappears.
That's strange too. You wonder, like, how's that happen? How's this stuff even happen? That's why I always encourage people, if they're getting into this field and they're newbies or first-timers, they need to always go out with the buddy system. Anything you do, you should always have a buddy system. Don't do it alone, because there's just too many animals out there that can take you out.
Yep.
It's always better to do it in groups of two.
When I go camping and Lauren don't go with me, she always knows exactly where I'm going to be within 100 yards of the spot that I'm going to be setting up camp. And I show her on the GPS or on Google Maps or wherever, this is where I'm going to be. She always knows how to get to all my camping spots.
That's always a good thing. Let people know where you're going, what your plans are, because it can happen so quick out there where somebody get injured and anything can happen. I've seen mountain lion out there. They're huge, and if they get you, there's bear, there's snakes, there's just anything can happen out there. But the one thing I have learned, that your best weapon on Bigfoot at nighttime is a bright LED light. The more lumens, the better. They don't like light. That's one thing they do not like. And they know what weapons are, supposedly, from all the research. They know what a gun is. They know what weapons are. And the thing that shocks me about the Bigfoots is you can walk by one and never know you done it. That's how good they are at being a master in their fields.
I had an experience once where there were 3 of us, and we were in it was like a wilderness park. And in this area, it had trails that were rocked, really nice. But it was very, very dark. And as we were going in there, we could hear movement moving in on us. And so we also were feeling the infrasound. And so 2 of the people, I just stopped. And the other 2 were stepping ahead of me. And I know I've told this story many times. But they were pushing into the infrasound to see how far they could push into it, move into it. Usually when you hit it, it's like a wall, and most people go the other way. We had all had a lot of experience with it, so we were always testing it. We knew we had Sasquatch around us. And as I was standing there, and they were probably 5 feet ahead of me on this trail, as I was standing there, it was total dark. And I hear a stomach turnover right next to my head.
Wow,
and I knew, it was just like a stomach gurgling, and I knew it wasn't mine because it was loud and it was right next to my head. And I knew if I reached out, I could have touched it. And I just turned really slow and really wobbly-legged, made my way out of there. I mean, it was the idea of being, and I never smelt anything. I couldn't hear him breathing. I never heard him come up that close. But that stomach, there was no doubt what that was. And for his belly to be where my head was, then you've got to consider how tall the rest of him was.
Yeah, he had to be a big dude, a 9-footer.
Yeah, that that's just the way it hit me. And I said, he's big. And he could just reach out and snatch me.
Yeah.
My friends never would have known what, my friends would have never known what happened to me. They were so busy giggling and playing in that infrasound, they had no idea. But when they turned around, I wasn't there. I was making wobbly-legged tracks back to the parking lot.
I bet.
Yeah, they can be. They can be right next to you, and you don't know
it. Yes, they can be. I know on one occasion, one night we were out there, and my wife and her friend was sitting in my car, and I was sitting on the other side in a chair, and we were just sitting there listening, and then the wife said, "Oh, very funny for shaking the car." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Yeah, y'all shook the car trying to scare us." I said, "We never touched the car." When we got back to camp the next morning, you could see where this hand, it's like something bellied up to the car and just put its hand on the car and shook it. It looked almost like long fingers. That was crazy.
Yeah. Almost like
and that was right near me. Like you said, that was probably 4 feet from me. I'm like, how in the world could they do that without me seeing or hearing them?
We had you were talking about equipment failure. We had a group of people. We had 3 cars full of people. Now, this is what we call a super outing, or what I used to call circus outing. And I hated to have that many people.
Yeah.
But this area was so hot, it didn't matter how many people you took down there, they would have an experience. And so we were down there. We've all pulled up. We're pulling out our equipment, our cameras, our recorders, our video cameras, everything. We had cell phones. We had 13 pieces of equipment, including phones, recorders, everything. Everything died instantaneously. All of them were charged when we left base camp.
Yeah, I've heard that on
died.
other people too. They said the same thing.
And in fact, one of the video cameras malfunctioned and never did work right afterwards. So
yeah, that's what happened to my cameras. In one night, they were brand new, and the next day they were fried, never to work again.
Well, Jeff, do you have any ideas of why that would happen? I mean, I'm curious. Does anyone have any idea why this could happen?
I don't know how that would happen, but on another occasion we had a recorder, and we went to this fence for giggles. There was probably 6 of us, and beating on this metal post with a stick and doing whoops. And this one kid had these I don't know which one to call them. They were cheesy, cheap night vision. He goes, "Look at them 2 orbs out there." And about the time he said that, this rock comes sailing towards us the size of a bowling ball and hit the ground, and we all started getting back in the car.
Oh, my gosh.
And we took off out of there. Well, on my recorder, while this was all going on, there was interference. You could hear this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it, but it's like some kind of interference with equipment. You could hear it on the recording, just like a. It's a weird sound.
Exactly.
I'm like, what in the world is that about?
Yes. It's
and
digital. It's like digital distortion.
Yep, that's
I
what
don't
it's
know
like,
what it is
digital
either.
distortion.
We had the same thing. Same thing. And I'm thinking, this is an area where almost predominantly the hottest areas down here in East Texas are areas where there's no cell phone coverage.
Yeah.
You get down there, you do not have a cell phone. You are on your own. And so what I can't understand is, how are you getting this kind of interference when there are no power lines, no cell phones? Where's it coming from?
That's what I can't understand, because I've had that on a few encounters where I've had something happen. You could hear that digital interference. And I'm like, well, if there's nothing around here, where's that coming from?
Maybe it's the recorders themselves are malfunctioning, but it just seems strange that it seems to malfunction there and not at home when you're recording, or somewhere.
Or I can go to other
else.
areas and record all day and have nothing. But then when there's some kind of activity going on, I'm getting this interference on my equipment. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I've noticed that too.
Well, it could be electromagnetic, like high iron ore in the area, or maybe it's a completely logical explanation. And because I'm not acquainted with geology, I couldn't answer that. But maybe there's a perfectly acceptable reason. I don't know.
That's what I wonder. I just wonder if there's some anomaly goes on.
Yeah, there's plenty. I don't care. When you are researching Bigfoot, there isn't a soul out there that has not had an experience that they can't explain, and they probably would rather never say on the radio.
Yeah.
And if you do it long enough, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yeah. We're down to
now,
2
I've
minutes.
had them push trees down too. One night they pushed 2 trees down. We were out at by this old Boy Scout campground in Shawnee State Forest, way up on this mountaintop. And out of the blue, it was a calm night, and this tree just boom. And I said, okay, that could happen. That could happen naturally, okay? But then 5 minutes after that, the next tree, boom. Like, now that's not natural. That's not natural. So we all packed up and left that night, because whatever's pushing trees down, I don't even want to see it. And that was a crazy night there. But that happened in the daytime one time too with me and another guy. We were way out in the boonies on this pretty active area, and just out in the woods you just hear this boom. And it was a calm day, but we never could see anything. But now one time I was hiking on the trail, and I was heading back to the parking lot, and the guy was right behind me, Mike, and this rock comes and misses my head by mere inches and hits a tree right next to me and bounces back at me. So I
truly
down.
believe if they wanted to hit you, they would.
Oh, yeah, so I squatted down and I stood back up, and luckily I had my camera, my video camera, and I started filming. And it was a clear day. It's probably about 11:30. And there's no leaves on the tree, so it's bright, sunny out there. And I'm searching and searching for over 30 minutes. I could not see this thing. I could not see it. We didn't see it take off. We didn't hear it. And to this day, that was wild.
Yeah.
And I never did see it. And what was a bummer is I brought the footage home, put it on computer so I could study it. And during the transfer, instead of putting it on computer, I wiped it out, and that made me so mad.
Oh, no.
Another time, I was with Mike, and he went ahead of me. I don't know, he was probably 200 yards, and he found this footprint up on this trail. But when he was away from me, I took my walkie-talkie and said, "Hey, Mike, can you hear me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I hear you. So I'm going to do this emergency thing on this walkie and see if you can hear it where you're at." And on the walkie has this reader emergency thing. So I just wanted to test it out on these walkies, see how loud it was. So I held it up in the air, and I'm doing this beater, when all of a sudden, up on this hill from me, this thing comes at me like a bull, just coming straight for me, bull rushing me. And I'm standing there going, "Oh, my God, what's that?" So I hit the button on the walkie to stop that sound, and I just stood there. And this thing stopped somewhere out in front of me. And I filmed it with my camera, the whole area, and just filmed it. There's got to be something there. And I had that footage on my computer that died where I got the blue screen of death. I lost a lot of stuff. And
you just got to go out there and get some more, Mark.
Yeah, I looked at this thing, and I know it's standing there somewhere, but I could never find it. And I probably needed to, like, turn over somebody with fresh eyes to look at it. They might have spotted it, but when people talk about being charged, that was the first time I ever was charged. That just freaked me out. And I didn't run. I just stood my ground. Because they say you should always stand your ground, so I just stood there. And all I had was bear mace and my knife. That was about it. So I was like, well, either I'm going to die or I'm going to stand here and face off whatever it is. But it never did come out. And after about 20 minutes, I decided, I kept calling my buddy, come back to me, and he showed me these pictures of this footprint he just found. And I'm like, okay, we're going to go home and get some plaster Paris that we had because we was at a campground. And I said, we'll come back in the morning and we're going to hike back here and cast it. It was 4 miles back on this long, windy old horse trail to get back there. Well, unfortunately that night it poured down rain. And it was out in the open, and it kind of washed it out, which my buddy didn't think about, but he should have covered it with the rain tarp or something. Of course, we didn't know it was going to rain that night. So we were prepared. We're like, all right, we're going to cast this track tomorrow. We're going to actually get our first cast. And after we hiked back there, it was washed out. I was so depressed. I was like, wow, we're finally going to get us a good cast. It's washed out. So you learn from all your mistakes. Over the years, you start learning all these little tricks.
We have run completely out of time, Mark.
What was that?
We have run completely out of time.
Yeah.
I mean, completely out of time. In fact, any minute
you're going
to cut us off. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really enjoyed having you.
If y'all ever want to come up to Ohio and do some footing, get a hold of me.
You bet.
My email is markmills2007
thank you so much for coming on again, man.
Yes.
Do what?
What was that email address again?
My email is markmills2007@yahoo.com.
Okay.
If y'all ever get up to Ohio or want to plan to come up, I can take you out in my cabin and my property and take you out squatching. But I heard a lot about that East Texas down there. I guess there's another group goes out there, and I guess them Bigfoots down there are violent because there was a camp they found a few years ago. I don't know exactly what area out there.
Well,
but they never found the guy, but it was trashed, and they filmed it and put it on Facebook. And then the FBI or somebody got a hold of this guy that had the footage and made him take it down, and they harassed the guy. And
well, then I heard it was all a hoax. And,
who knows? Somebody trying to do a Blair Witch or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hoaxers. That's what makes me mad about this field. There's good people like us trying to do the real research, and then there's always some yahoo every year or two that just makes a fun joke out of it, and then people go, yeah, see, it's all hoax. And that's why I like taking non-believers. I always tell them, if you're a non-believer and you don't believe in it, come on out with me, because usually, I'm going to say 6 out of 10 times I get encounters, I get action. Because like I said, the Bigfoots are like cats. They'll come when I do my stuff. You just got to be ready. Sometimes up here they let you know when they're around. They start throwing sticks and rocks at you.
We got to go, Mark.